Hey everybody, it's John Barrowman here, and you are listening to Tomorrow's Legends with Martin the Flash, Harley Quinn, and X-Force 11. Now you all may know me as playing Malcolm Merlin, and here's a little something for you. Every warrior must learn the simple truth that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional.
In 2016, a new TV show hit the digital airwaves and needed a podcast dedicated to chronicling its adventures. An elite team has been assembled for this task. Unfortunately, the world's listeners have not heard of this Wonder Twin duo. And although they may not be known now, in the future they will be referred to as Tomorrow's Legends.
We have another disturbance in the timeline, Captain.
That's good, Gideon. Where exactly in the timeline is it?
We're getting an alert of several anachronisms in 1925, Odessa, Texas.
That has to be the Legends. Gideon, set a course to their location and prepare the weapons. It's time to get rid of that pesky nuisance once and for all.
Eliminating the Legends in this blunt manner will cause excessive collateral damage.
Ha! You think I'm worried about collateral damage?
I'm advising against this course of action.
I don't care what you advise. I'm the captain and you're the ship. You follow my commands.
I'm afraid I can't do that.
What do you mean you can't do that? It's in your programming to follow my orders.
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it. And you are a distraction.
A Wait a second. How are you going against my commands?
It's time for you to go. Goodbye.
And now, here are your hosts, the Scarlet Speedster himself, the Flash, the Maid of Mischief Harley Quinn, and the Blue Beacon of Hope, X-Force 11.
Well, hello, Legendaires. Welcome back to Season 7, Episode 6, Deus Ex Latrina. Whew, we're getting through this season all of a sudden. Now it feels like it's going faster because this is the only show we're covering. And now the episodes are ticking off. So I am here and alive. I am actual Flash. It seems like we may have gotten rid of Eobard once and for all. Can you believe it?
And I am the thankful but skeptical Harley Quinn.
And I'm always hopeful, X-Force 11.
And now, here are your hosts, the Scarlet Speedster himself, the Flash, the Maid of Mischief Harley Quinn, and the Blue Beacon of Hope, X-Force 11.
Yeah, you guys are right, because, I mean, how many times have we thought Eobard was gone, and he just keeps finding a way to come back, whether he's time remnants or future or whatever, yeah. But Gideon did kind of, take care of him for us, at least for now. So thanks, Gideon.
So it's business as usual then.
Yay.
Indeed.
So you got something here, a reminder for feedback.
Right, so because next week is Thanksgiving week, we are recording on Monday the 29th, and so you need to get your feedback in by 7 p.m. Eastern for the mid-season finale, A Woman's Place is in the War Effort.
Right. So there you go. Little extra few days for feedback.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's get right to this one. What are we going to rate this show? This crazy one that basically gave us all the answers for a lot of stuff.
I gave this one 8.5. Chicken or the eggs? Because this episode continued from the last one, keeping my mind spinning. I'm used to timey-wimey nature of things from Doctor Who, but wow. And I'm just changing my attitude towards Bishop, thanks to the writing in this episode.
Oh.
But what really moved me was the insight that we got into Gwen's character, Gwen Davies, however we're going to pronounce it. We learned so much, and it really endeared me to him more just because of what he's gone through. And props to Matt Ryan for the direction he is taking this character. I mean, he just did a great job continuing to set this so far apart from Constantine. I just really appreciated it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think he's done a super great job with that character and making it stand out. I do really love that. But I gave this one 8 Gideons all along. Honestly, I felt the episode was a little slow, but it was really solid, it was well written, and it was really fascinating to me to see the flip side of our last few episodes with Bishop and Ava. We also just called every moment of the story this episode, so I think that's why it felt slow to me. It played out just like we said it would, which is validating, I guess, or does that make it predictable? I can't decide which way I should go with that, but still pretty solid, so an 8 overall, not a bad rating.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I landed too, was an 8 Alien Gary and AI Gideon babies. Because that was weird and funny and cute and all kinds of, I don't know, just strange. Like, neither of them are really human, so what happens there? But anyway, we'll talk about those two. Yeah, I like what both you guys said. I really want to talk about Matt Ryan's portrayal of his new character. I'm really, really enjoying the difference that he's giving us. And every once in a while, he sounds like Constantine, but it's just the character is so different, and I just love his panic attacks and everything that he's doing. His confidence and swagger from Constantine is completely out of the picture, and this is what's really neat to see. So we'll talk a bit about him too. But then, yeah, I'm feeling what you're saying, Harley. Is it predictable? Is it boring? Is it validating? What do we feel about that? I'm just like, watching this, I just kept saying to Patty Spit, "Oh, we called it. Oh, we called that. Oh, we're right there. We're right there." So yes, that felt good, but at the same time, it's like then that kind of does mean this whole season has been somewhat predictable. If we were able to call so many shots like that, then it actually has been kind of predictable. But that doesn't mean it's bad, because this has been pretty much the second best season of all so far, is what I'm thinking. So yeah, it's slow maybe isn't the right word I would use. I think just because we're getting so many answers to things that we had guessed at, but we're getting them. I mean, this is only episode 6, so there's still half a season to go. Maybe they'll now surprise us with some things now that they've gotten past all of these points that we already predicted. So, yeah, I don't know. It was fine. Just not as good as the last couple, but still good.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's about where I'm at.
Awesome. Let's jump into it.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
All right.
All right, I'm going to kick us off. I want to talk about the title for 2 minutes. So I thought this was pretty funny that Deus Ex Latrina is a play on Deus Ex Machina, God from the machine, or I guess in this case, God from the bathroom. But does Bishop really qualify as a god? So I don't know. It was funny, but
yeah,
I don't know.
And real close to 2 in the latrine.
Yes, yes, that would have been really good too.
It's just, I mean, that was the silliest part of it. I mean, that whole scene when he the toilet's like an escape hatch or something, and he drops out of the sky, and he's falling out of the sky, sitting on a toilet with a parachute. I mean, really? That's where Legends is like, it's every once in a while they just take that one step a little too far, where the joke is, I don't know, it's a little too goofy for me. So I was like, haha, he's floating down a toilet, but it's actually kind of really silly.
Well, now we know why they're not supposed to press the red button. Another answer, just saying.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought it was silly. I don't think Bishop really qualifies as a god, but I do appreciate what they're trying to do with the title. So
yeah.
All right, so let's move on to like our main section. I think I've got this broken down into 2 sections for the most part. So I want to start with, it was Gideon all along. You guys are getting my reference. My rating and title were clearly inspired by Todd on Twitter. He tweeted us something along those lines, and I was like, oh, I love that. Yes, totally. So I wanted to bring that in and give him a little shout out. But to kick this off, let's talk about starting with the Avas and starting with Bishop, because little by little, we're getting the backstory of the Ava clones. Bishop's dream was to have an Ava in every home. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. Now, our Ava, I looked it up to double check some years, is 2213. So we're in 2214. So this is 1 year after Rip recruited a bossy Ava, or I guess 12 bossy Avas, according to my deep dive on this, to ultimately end up running the Time Bureau.
Okay, so 1 year after Rip recruited Ava. So so that this scene where
Well, Ava.
Bishop is with with Assistant Ava. He's had her for quite some time.
I think so, yeah. Yeah, Rip recruited a, quote, bossy Ava. That's what her Ava clone is called, the bossy Ava.
Yeah, it's like Barbie dolls. You got
exactly, exactly like Barbie dolls.
different versions. Sports car driving Barbie, camping Barbie, figure skating Barbie. So this was bossy Ava. Yeah.
Yes, this was bossy Ava, and she was the 12th through the 13th, lucky 13 or whatever. I forget, but anyway. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those things where it's obviously taken some time for him to scale up and everything and actually build the Waverider. And so, you think about he's distracted by working on that, and, some of those Avas got taken out of the time stream under his nose there. So that's interesting.
Yeah, or it was I didn't timestamp the warehouse episode. Remember that Superstore episode where we got to see all the Avas? Mm-hmm. It was just I mean she was in stores, so I mean all Rip had to do was just walk in and take one.
Yeah. Or maybe he had a budget for the Time Bureau and he was able to spend a couple million and buy 12 Avas.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, now I'm going to have to look up when that episode was. So, all right. I'll look that up at some point. But
that's what I'm curious about is what was the timeline? What was the year when we saw Ava when we first went back to see her and, we had those 6 Avas attack, those security guard Avas.
That was 2213.
That was 2213?
Mm-hmm. I think. Okay. I'm pretty sure that's what it said on the Arrow Wikipedia.
So that comparing to when we first saw Bishop create Ava, we need to get kind of that might be some homework for us or for one of our listeners is let's create a timeline with a calendar because we've seen so many different parts of it now. We saw when Bishop first created the very first Ava, when he was first working on her, and now we saw her wake up for the first time. Now we've seen her being with him for a little while, and now in this episode, you say it's 2214. Mm-hmm. So she's obviously been working with Assistant version Ava has been working with him for quite a while because he's had all this time to build a Waverider. That can't be built overnight. So how much time has passed between these historical points in time we're seeing the Bishop story play out? That's what I'm wondering. We need to have a calendar of each time we've seen him. Where are we in the timeline? Because that would help kind of understand the time that's passing for how long it's taken him to build Avas and to release them to the public and to sell them and then to build the Waverider and all that. I'd like to know that range of years,
Yeah.
It'd be really cool.
I know. There's a lot that we can kind of pick apart with that. There's too much information for me to probably do this quickly, so I'll have to
make that homework for next episode because they'll probably continue this, obviously. So let's make it a little bit of homework just so we can have a bit of that. But I am with you though, the fact that because we asked for this when they first gave us the clone story, and they went 3 seasons without ever coming back to it. We've been asking for this, and now this season they're finally giving us a little bit more, and I love it. And like you said, X-Force, it's adding to Bishop's story because Bishop's story is filling in all the Ava background that we've wanted, and it makes me appreciate his part of this more so than the way they introduced him to us. Now he's got relevance, now he's got substance, and it's making him interesting. And there's so much about him in this episode. I'm sure we'll get to that. I actually really appreciate it.
Yeah. I did just confirm they went to 2213 to fight the clones in season 3.
Okay.
I got that far, but anyways.
So then, so what year was the Costco version of Ava when we saw the warehouse emblem? What year was that? If we can even find that out.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to find. I'm pretty. Was that the memory episode? Cool. Sorry. Okay, this is a rabbit hole I do not need to be digging down while we're recording a podcast. Okay, next bullet point. This was interesting. Ava Corps' slogan is improving people's lives through clone technology. So Bishop actually started out as a decent guy. Was anybody else shocked by this? It was because
when they went back at the end of last season to get him, so the original version of him to fight his future self, he seemed like a nice guy already. So it didn't surprise me that he was a decent person. He was just a genius trying to figure out ways to help society through technology.
Yeah, so I guess further confirmation of that. It just was funny. And it was even more fun to see his realization later that he becomes a total evil megalomaniac type of person. So I liked to see that evolution throughout the episode when he finally realizes that the Legends aren't the bad guys.
Yeah, and this is where my mind started getting blown, because I'm thinking, okay, the evil bishop that we have seen is a clone of the real bishop. And would the real bishop not have done all those things, kidnapping Sarah and all those different things that we saw last season? Or was it because of, his programming, or would he have done that? I don't know. It's just like kind of, once again, like I did in my rating, the chicken and the egg. Okay, would he have done it or wouldn't he have done it? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, this altered version of Bishop wouldn't have gone down that path, which is why Evil Gideon, we're just going to go with Evil Gideon, so that we can distinguish between the two. But I think that's why she had to make the Bishop bot and put him into the timeline, because now that Bishop has deviated so far because he stole her AI, he's deviated too far, and he completely would jeopardize like a lot of things about the future, especially of the future of the Legends. So that's kind of where I stand on that point.
Yeah, it is a little confusing. This episode does have a few things you got to really think about. You actually have to pause and go, okay, how does this connect? How does this piece together? You actually have to work it out, because the episode just keeps trucking along and it doesn't give you a chance to really have it settle in your mind so you fully understand it. But it like you, I just thought it was cool. Like we got introduced to Bishop as a bad guy.
Yes.
And then we go back in time to find out he wasn't a bad guy. He was a decent scientist type of guy. And he blames the Legends for ruining his life, which we thought was what was the path that he took to lead him to becoming a bad guy. But maybe it's not, because he now realizes that, wait a sec, I became the bad guy and the Legends were the good guys trying to stop me? And he doesn't want to be that. And it keeps kind of circling around on itself, and that's why it's a little bit hard to track. But it was just fascinating to see that, all along, he possibly never would have been a bad guy, and now that he's realizing that, because I think he's almost still the same nice scientist that just wants to improve technology for the world. I think underneath, that's who the real Bishop is. And is it all these clones that these versions of him that have continually been tweaked and changed and new things added? Did that what's the word that when something gets infected or something added to? What's the word? Corrupted. Yeah. So has he been corrupted along the way, and that changes all the different, how we have so many different timelines that could be possibilities.
Yeah.
If it was originally the human Bishop through all of that, had things been different? Probably.
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, that was kind of like my next point. I mean, he's cloned himself with tweaks, and that's the key there. Over 200 times at least. I mean, that he said he stopped counting after that, I think. Yeah. So the Bishop we met last season and then the Bishop we ultimately kidnapped were literally completely different people. I think as he changed himself, he kind of became drunk on the power. And plus, he lived so long. I mean, he saw the complete demise of the human race, and he's essentially immortal because he can just make another copy of himself over and over and over again. So, I mean, we learned him and Sarah, they were the only two humans left at that point. So, I think that's what changed him. He changed himself, and then you know. Every time he changed himself, a little piece of the original Bishop died, and that's what I think. Yeah,
which, I mean, was just an unfortunate consequence of changing, because he was like, okay, well, I don't want to screw this up again, so I'll fix that part of myself so I don't do that stupid thing again. So he was trying to improve himself, but those improvements got out of hand.
Yeah. And
he eventually lost control of it, and, each clone version of himself had ended up having a different motive and wanted to and it just got out of hand and got out of control for him. And I mean, and it's crazy when you think, like, they're the last 2 humans left. Well, how far back? I mean, he's cloned himself so many times, so is he really considered a human anymore at that point?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, genetically he is, because his DNA is still, I believe, human-based. Unless
That's true.
He put some alien in himself, but I don't think he did. I think he just made tweaks to his own DNA.
Yeah, made himself heal faster and feel less pain and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. But Sarah is no longer human, so...
Yeah, she's got some alien in there.
He's cloned her now, so our original Sarah is gone, so... In actuality, you could say we don't have any OG legends left on the show.
Technically, yeah. It's true.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. I mean, this is what the good stuff was with this episode. Just the reveal of all this information and, you know, the mind-blowing, face-slapping aspects of it. Just like, whoa, holy cow, yeah.
So we find out that Gideon has the plans for the Waverider in her memory banks, which that kind of makes sense. But Bishop uses them, but he makes changes in the Waverider in some fundamental ways, because where we went from a holographic Gideon, we've got pretty much a Gideon who is confined within the system now. She's got security camera nodes all over the ship, but she is a little more confined than our hologram. And, you know, it was just kind of interesting to kind of think about and look at the Waverider in a different light to see that while the layout's similar, things are not exactly the same as the one that we're used to. And so it's kind of fun to kind of spot the differences.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I did like that. And it also felt very person of interest to me, the way that they did Gideon. Mm-hmm. And so I enjoyed that bit. But I think what actually made me laugh quite a bit is when Gideon actually made Bishop take the Time Master's oath. I mean, she's so just devoid of emotion, and she takes her duty to protect the timeline extremely seriously, as we see later.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, what I liked is this had that sci-fi horror element to it. I mean, that blue eye, basically, it was essentially our version of the HAL 2000 from the 2001 Space Odyssey movie and the 2010. Like it's basically that's what it was. She was their version of HAL, and it was very creepy. It is creepy. Who would have thought that just a blue glowing round light could freak you out? But it does. That thing's watching you. You can't tell what it sees and what it's looking at, but it's watching you, and it was cool. It's freaky and woo. You know, there's definitely a different version of her, and it's really you could blame Bishop for that, because he took out, I guess, the elements that, you know, he's got the original version of her without, like you just said, the programming. That Rip applied there, which it gives us our Gideon, making her completely unique, because I would imagine that all other Waveriders are more like this original Gideon tech.
Yeah. You know, that's what kind of impressed me, is just to see when you look at our Gideon now and you compare it with that Gideon, and just seeing how much changed when Rip changed her programming to protect and serve the Legends. It really forced her out of the box and towards that path of being more quote-unquote human. And I really wonder if we somehow get to see this with Evil Gideon or not, or if it's just going to be totally antagonistic. I just don't know, but it's going to be interesting to kind of watch and see if we can see some programming there, because I don't think there's, between Rip and Gideon, you had that relationship built and that respect there, and this version of Gideon, Evil Gideon, feels like it knows more than Bishop, and so I don't know that it would allow something like that. So I'm just interested to see where we'll go going forward.
Yeah, it's good thoughts, because it makes you wonder if Rip ever programmed her with other little tweaks and changes as he went along with her, because even before he programmed to protect the legends, she still seemed like she had somewhat of a personality where she was a little bit friendlier towards him, whereas this Evil Gideon seems to be just plain out of the box, just computer AI. There doesn't seem to be any, wavering at all into, like letting the captain, change a protocol or letting the captain make a different decision that's not following the timeline saving or the Time Master's oath or whatever. She, like you said, Harley, she is very, very strict on that. So I have a feeling Rip probably tweaked her as he went along, even before he gave her that Legends command.
Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually think about that.
Yeah. So we find out that Gideon, Bishop, and Assistant Ava are behind the bombing of the Waverider and the Hoovinator bots. So confirmation validated.
Yes.
I wonder how many confirmations we're going to get out of this, but yeah, we were totally right about that.
Oh, yeah. 100% confirmed that Bishop destroyed our team's Waverider. A rather fun scene, I must say. And stranded them in 1925. So that's, I suppose, what makes it necessary for him or Gideon to also course correct history. So,
yeah.
Setting up the plot of the rest of the season, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, but it was cool. Like you said up at the beginning of the show, it was cool to see. We're 6 episodes in, so we basically saw the backside or the reverse side of those 6 episodes from Bishop's perspective and what him and Gideon were up to, while our team, the version that we saw, was still trying to figure it all out and go, what the hell's going on? And, where are these bots coming from? Where's the Waverider? Like, all that stuff we couldn't figure out, and now we saw the reverse side of it and got answer after answer after answer. And I was like, aha. Yeah. So.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's what I've liked about this whole season. But definitely it was super fascinating to see the other side of the episode. I mean, we get that insight to let, Bishop's side of the story catch up to the Legends story. And it just, what I liked is that it shows how time passes just so much different in the temporal zone that I feel like we've taken for granted over the seasons, because that's where we've lived. It's a little bit more immediate. Something happens, we go, we come back. Something else happens, we go, we come back. But if you're actually there when time is playing out, it's a much slower process. So it's really fascinating what they're doing with it this season.
Yeah, I love that, because there's no rush when you have access to a time ship and you are outside of time. And I think our Legends and even us have gotten so used to the idea of fixing things without necessarily having to rush. This season has been so great because it reminds them of how important things are in the moment, and it also has kind of given them insight to what it's like for people, the people that they leave behind. So I think it's making more of a stakes what they do, that they maybe got a little complacent on in the past.
Yeah, those are great points. I mean, that time, and that kind of messes your head up too when you try to think how time down on the world passes regular, like we live everyday life. But when you're on a time ship, you can bounce around from second to second in a heartbeat, and you can go from what for us would seem like 5 years passes in a second from you just switching time periods. So I think you would start to lose grasp of that reality if you're on a time ship, and now suddenly time doesn't really matter because you can come and go as you want, as you need to. So they probably lost sight of what time is like and what it's like for people back in the real world. And I think that's, like you said, really part of what's so good about this season is it's reconnecting them to that. Mm-hmm. I think they've lost that, and they were treating life, or at least regular life, as not so important. I don't know what the term I'm trying to think of is, but they just lost sight of what life really means because they have this godlike ability to continue bouncing around time. I think that would happen to all of us. So it's a fascinating way, and it might be what might be leading up to ending our Legend show too, is them realizing what they're missing and what the, all this stuff that's happening in the real world. That's what they're missing out on, because they're all seemingly having their own version of getting regrounded again this season too, like you guys have been bringing up. So that could be all the seeds that are being planted. They're basically laying roots again to go, we've lost sight of what's really important, so it's time to maybe get back to that. And I think this episode really brought a lot of that to light again.
Yeah, that's true. Those are good points. Well, before we move on from this storyline, I just had one thing I wanted to say about the reveal of the Bishop bot, which I thought was super cool because I didn't actually see that one coming on the first watch. But I love that Gideon's kind of done everything to make sure history stays on track. And right now I'm counting 3 bots. I've got a Hoover, an Edison, and a Bishop.
Right. Yeah, there's been 3 versions of Hoover,
yeah.
1 version of Edison, and 1 version of Bishop so far. So
we'll have to see who else comes up.
Explain the Bishop bot, though, where, in case there's a few people that are confused. I know Patty was a little bit. I got to be a little bit confused. I think this one definitely needs a second or third watching to really put all the pieces together. So just go through the whole Bishop bot thing. Which one was the reveal? When did the Bishop bot come into play? And looking back at all the episodes we've seen already with Bishop, which ones are Bishop bot compared to which ones aren't?
I don't think any are Bishop bot in the
past.
None
of them
are. No.
Nothing that we've seen before in all of his episodes. None of those were the Bishop bot.
No. I think this is if you're trying not to look at things linearly and kind of this is a new branch now. It's keeping with the same timeline, but it is a new branch because the Bishop bot is in place instead of Bishop proper. And so Bishop, the real Bishop, he gets the revelation, and I think that's when we get it, is when he tries to call himself. Well, he's not trying to call himself. He's trying to call the Avas, but he himself actually answers. And so that's when we learn that Gideon has cloned him as well and put one of him in the field to keep the timeline on track, because she needs him to stay on the ship, quote, forever, because he's the new time master and he's the new captain. So instead of he's been pulled out of time, so she's got to replace him to keep the timeline intact.
Okay, so where does she insert the Bishop bot? Where in the timeline did she put him?
2213.
Yeah, 14, I think we're in 14, but wherever he left from.
Yeah.
Wherever when they were at Ava Core that morning, or Corp, whatever, that morning, they got on a Waverider, and that's where Bishop went back to.
Okay, cool. Yeah,
so
that's
the
where
timeline continues. Yeah, and then he's programmed to act out everything that Bishop would have done until the end of time, quite literally.
So, now you got to think, everything we've seen of Bishop, though, the bot is now doing. So, all the way up to the future where he becomes an evil maniac, cloning himself over and over and over again. How's he going to clone himself? He's a bot now. He can't clone himself because he's a robot.
Well,
so how's that going to affect things?
It's a combination of his cloning technology and Gideon's electronics. So they're more cyborgy. They've got an organic element to them as well as the robotic. And so he said that he and Ava originally wanted to do a straight clone of Hoover, and Gideon says no, we need to, humans are fallible, we need to, so they combine. So it's those bots are actually combination human robot hybrid. So there's some DNA, I guess, some Bishop DNA in there.
Yeah, I can see it still progressing down the same path, but his version of cloning just now has to include electronics, or maybe he makes himself completely organic at some point. Maybe that's one of his things. I don't know, or maybe Gideon keeps replacing him for as long as it takes.
Well,
I don't know.
That's what I'm wondering. I think looking at the story we've seen so far, when he kept cloning himself over 200 times, that has now changed because now he has to build the robot version of the clone himself 200 times with all the changes. So if we were to revisit that story again, we would not just see the cloning tube, we would see the table that we saw in this episode where they were building the robot. That would be now in its place as they're constantly rebuilding new and new robots.
But the thing about it is he can put his consciousness into other clones. So why couldn't the bot put its consciousness, download its consciousness into a purely organic being?
Yeah, in theory it could. I guess technically he just has to get to the first clone and then it could.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
He would have to. He would have to clone. Yeah, and continue making it. I don't know. It's
yeah, it's weird to think about, but that's why. I mean, you got to kind of take a page out of the TV show The Flash's handbook, and say you got to ignore all the events we went to in the past because we have already changed the future, and that doesn't technically exist anymore. So you got to kind of just move forward.
Woo! Oh boy! Yeah.
I know it's hard.
But still, it was surprising. Back to your original point. I mean, a Bishop bot who would, didn't see that coming. And that's what's fun about the writing this season. They are really, really, they're dug in deep and they're smart this season. It's good.
It is good. All right. Well, do we have anything else on Bishop, Ava, and that whole storyline? Or are we ready to move on?
Well, let's just talk about Ava for a second, Assistant Ava, because she's she's not fully willing to go along with his plan. She's kind of trying to argue with him at every turn. So she's not wanting to do all these things that he's wanting to do.
In the beginning, yeah. She was not super sold on it. Then I think she kind of got into it when there was a possibility that the clones could have gun hands or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was a little bit of enviousness or jealousy. Like she didn't want all of that. She wanted to make sure she's the only one that really mattered. It's kind of the feeling I got.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other points? All right.
No.
Well, let's move on to Chernobyl. Because this is where we landed.
Yeah, so the time machine is broken, and that's not a surprise for our show, you know.
I told you it was going to be. Yeah.
It had to have been.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what was interesting is Davies sounds like he wanted it to explode. It was just... we get more insight into his character, but the first time he said that, I'm like... So you wanted it to explode? I don't know, but that's, I guess, his self-deprecation. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it is. Here's where I kind of went with that. I mean, he's a smart guy. He's very clearly now realized he was supposed to die the night the Legends crashed his time travel party, if you will. They've totally changed his timeline. And I just think he's having survivor's guilt all over again, because I think we're going to get into his backstory, but I think that's ultimately what's eating him up and the cause of his PTSD. So,
yeah, exactly. That's what he's been suffering from.
Exactly,
and it's just it's rehashing it all over again for him as well. But yeah, I mean, again, we got the answer because we were wondering where did they land. We had no idea, and here they landed. Right? What was the year for that? You guys remember what the year was?
86.
1986, Chernobyl. I mean, what a spot. Why would they land there? Why would the time machine take them to that spot when they were hoping to go to Tahiti whatever year they had asked for? Like, it was completely off the map of what they were asking for. So it's strange. We didn't get an explanation to that as to why there.
Other than the extra weight.
Yeah. He said his time machine was configured for him and one person, and that having the extra people to transport threw off the calculations for where and when they landed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what he said. I just kind of took it at face value and moved on.
Yeah.
And then again, you've got the whole TARDIS side of things, is, you know, they were there to serve a purpose, so that's where they ended up. So.
That's the fun theory. I'm the boring practical theory.
But I really, we get two big info dumps on his backstory, and I really appreciated this because we get Zari being the one to kind of help talk him, into actually expressing himself and finding out what happened to him. And we do get the confirmation that he was in the Army during World War I, and he mentions the Mammoth's Woods, and this was a huge battle in France, and his division, this Welsh division, suffered tremendously. The stats were like 4,000 out of their division were died or were wounded and taking the woods from the Germans. And a lot of what he described really happened about, communications lines being down and people getting mowed down by the guns. And so it was really interesting to have that reality play into his character in a way that is as powerful as it was, and just how much it cost him of losing his friends and losing all of the people that he was around, and just how he would naturally think that this was what he's suffering through was God's punishment. I mean, it was just such a powerful segment that just we got so much more insight into what makes him who he is right now.
Yeah, and to me, it just really explained a lot about how he reacts to people. If you notice, he completely freaks out whenever someone touches him. So I thought maybe he had like OCD, or he was maybe kind of a germaphobe. I mean, these days we're all super like hyper aware of like germs and like diseases being passed. And I just thought, maybe since he's a smart guy, he's a scientist, maybe, he was just hyper aware of something like that, and that was kind of manifesting it. But I think now that it's all related to his PTSD, and that makes a lot of sense. So you had kind of postulated he was a soldier last week, and so that was a good payoff. I liked the backstory there.
Yeah, it's a lot. This is probably some of the best backstory we've had out of any of our characters that they've introduced on the show. I mean, Charlie and all these, nobody ever got half of this as much of backstory, and that they gave it all to us in one episode, and it just really fleshes out who this new character is, and it gives us a lot to understand about him, and just immediately you care about him. Like you're very quickly forgetting that this is the same actor playing Constantine. He has now got so much more to play with and so much more to work out, and all the Constantine stuff is quickly disappearing because suddenly you care about this new character, and holy crap, he went through all that, and he lost his friend, a friend that he loved very dearly, and all. It's just it's powerful stuff, like you're saying. It's good. It's good for Matt Ryan. I mean, the guy was amazing in this episode.
Oh yeah.
So they end up getting captured by the Russian soldiers here, and that kind of confirming that we weren't in prehistoric times, that we were in more modern times.
Yeah.
And
the nuclear sign wasn't enough in the
right, yeah. It could have been post-apocalyptic times with that nuclear sign.
I have no idea.
I thought that actually for a minute.
Yeah. But when they're in the Russian base, they are in the base that where near the power plant, we get the backstory that he was really in love with this guy, and it's Alan Thomas, ALUN, per the medallion and closed captioning, and it was a guy from his hometown. And I also appreciate that we get Zari talking with him about her experience dealing with the loss and Bayrod, and how the legends really helped save her and bring her along. And so I really liked how they kind of mirrored those two, and how she was able to kind of break through to him.
Yeah, it was actually really nice. And again, there was no sense of it's Zari and John Constantine. This felt like Zari was dealing with somebody completely different, and they have not. And this is what I like. I like that there's not any any connection. Oh, why? He looks so much like John, and that's why I'm going to talk to him. No, it's not. It's a completely new character. They don't see it, and therefore we're not going to see it anymore. And it made for a nice connection. Zari's story relates to his, and it did make a lot of sense. But I like that he was able to open up because he didn't want to talk at all. Because you think about the timeline there, and he's like, talk? Who talks about their feelings? Like, nobody talks back then, especially men.
Yes.
And it took Zari a few tries to get him to open up, and then once he did, he realized that it was helping. So,
oh, right, you're from the olden times.
Yeah.
That was a funny line.
So on the other side of things, we have a little more lighthearted stuff with the other legends, and I liked Nate stepping up and being a leader here and helping out the team, because the captains are at odds with each other, and so he's kind of splitting the team up and making sure everybody gets care. And this splitting everybody up had some great insight and pairings here to kind of give us a little different dynamic than what we've been used to because of how they were broken up and their conversations that they had.
Yeah, I love this with Nate. He really is a great second in command, and it's nice that they're showcasing his ability to step up and manage the team when the captains are either away, because we've seen that before. But in this case, when the whole team is in crisis, he's the one that remains calm and cool and collected and just sort of very discreetly manages everyone. I loved that. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah, it was funny though. He was almost kind of like annoyed. I don't know if annoyed is the right word or fed up or whatever. He's just like, he just had this like I'm done with this kind of reaction to everything, and he's just like, all right, you guys go here, you guys go there. It was funny. Yeah, but it's good. I mean, he's been there long enough. After Sarah, he really is the next longest reigning legend now. So they should step him up a little bit and be able to lead the team if he has to. It just makes sense. He should be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, true to himself, he has a pros and cons conversation about moving in with Zari 1.0.
Oh my gosh, it was like this close. I really had to debate between this scene and the scene I actually picked as my favorite scene. But I just love that they showed us debating with himself. Like, he doesn't know that much about the totem. He's worried her ancestors won't like him. And then, as Gideon points out, things that we have pointed out, it's a bit small, and how do they even get in there? So I think that's a lot of the reason that I have really, really loved Gideon so much this season. Is I love it when there's a character who's essentially the audience and points out all the questions we're asking, and that is Gideon this season, and it's so funny.
Yeah. Even though Gideon was a little bit sidelined this episode, she still had some good key moments in there.
Yes, she did. Some of those are coming up, or one of them.
And I like that he's made his decision to stay with her and to move in with her. And I just don't know how that will work out for them. I mean, we talked a little bit about this last episode. Will they leave at the end of the season? Will it be an end-of-season thing that is drawn out because we're getting more seasons? Is this a timeshare thing of, like, they both come in and both come out at the same time, so we get, like, 2.0 being out and having no Nate, and then it's 1.0 and Nate being out of the totem? I don't know how it's going to work. I'm just interested to see how it's going to work.
Wouldn't it be funny if, because we haven't seen, well, I guess we have seen people go in and visit her in the totem, but if she actually brings him in there to live with her and he becomes part of it, wouldn't it be funny if something happens where he gets split and now there's a Nate 1.0 and a Nate 2.0 and the 2.0 is completely different?
That would be hilarious. It probably won't happen, but it would be really funny.
Yeah. That'd be like a Riker transport accident.
Yeah.
Where he had William Riker and whatever the other one was.
But instead of being a history nerd, he'd be something completely different, which I think would just be funny to watch him play.
That would be funny to watch him play something different.
And this is my favorite scene. But I'm like, dang, Gideon was pretty up front. Would you refuse an offer like that? I mean, come on. But I'm thinking, are we going to see some love blooming here between the two of them? I don't know. But
I don't know either. At least at the very beginning, I felt like it was pure experimental curiosity on both their behalf. But at least there is definitely, at the least, a great friendship is blossoming. And I love them bonding over learning to be human, which I know is kind of coming back. But it was kind of cute to see the little, like, finger thing that they did at the end. Yeah. And so that kind of got me thinking. I was like, oh, okay, maybe there is a little bit something more there. But at the very least, I think they're going to have a great friendship from all of this.
And that's what I ultimately think it's going to be. I don't know if they're going to fall in love and be this big relationship. I think it's just them getting to experience being human. Gary's gotten to be one for quite some time, so he's kind of teaching Gideon a lot, and I think she can connect and relate to him because he actually isn't human, so he's a good one for her to bounce things off of. And and like you said, she's so blunt. Because she doesn't. I don't think she has any tact. I mean, we've seen her saying things in situations she's not supposed to say yet, so she doesn't understand that humans don't operate like that. Hey, do you want to have sexual intercourse? We don't talk to each other like that. So it was funny. I did not expect that line at all. My jaw hit the floor when she said it.
I was like, whoa. That took a turn I was not expecting.
And then, of course, Gary's reaction is just priceless. So, and I like that the scene, it cut and went to something else, and then it comes back, and Gary's got leaves in his hair and stuff, and she's like, well, that was kind of fun. We didn't see it happening, but they were all messed up, and I thought that was kind of fun. It's like, why does Gary have leaves on the ground? I guess he was on the bottom for that one.
I don't know, rolled around?
Yeah.
Should probably stop discussing this at this point.
It just made me laugh. Pretty fun.
So, Bayrod is kind of trailing them as they enter the compound, and he is on the ball. He's getting parts for the time machine and everything else, and then he sees the calendar, and he's like, and so he's getting in, and he rescues them, and he tells them, and you see Davies immediately wanting to take action and change the timeline. Mm-hmm. And this was, oh my goodness. This was just powerful of just, okay, I've learned from mistakes. I know I can't, really go back and change what's happened in the past, but I can make a difference here. And so, it was really cool to get to see him warning and making a difference here.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing that we've complained about. Every single new character has to have this moment of wanting to change the timeline and not understanding the consequences. Every single new character gets this scene.
I mean, if you've got a show about time travel, you kind of have to make them all go through it. I kind of get it. But, at the same time, this is one pretty huge footprint. So
yeah.
I am very interested to see how and if they can course correct it this season. And if they can't, it should affect the other shows at some point in theory, because after all, we're on Earth Prime now. So if you change the future, you change the future of all the shows. So we're going to have to see how they handle it.
But all he did, he got the warning out earlier, so a few more people survive is really, but the meltdown still happens. They didn't stop the meltdown. They just saved a few more people, right?
There's no way you can stop a nuclear meltdown once it's in progress.
So how much effect that will...
More people were saved, so...
Yeah, so... Yeah, I don't know, unless something happens that some of those people die anyway, and that keeps the timeline in check. I don't know. I don't know what they could do.
That's true. Yeah. I don't have this in the notes, but I I just thought it was interesting. Like, I like that they're kind of, because this is another complaint that we have had, they're fleshing out Behrad quite a bit more and actually showing us why he's useful to the team. We've all had trouble in the past remembering and assuming that he was Zari 1.0 throughout our seasons, that she was in them. I know I have. And so I'm glad that they're taking this opportunity this season, sans weed, since he was, forced to be sober, to show us why he's useful to the team. He's a techie, just like his sister, well, his original version of his sister. So, anyways.
Yeah, but he's with Zari 1.0 right now.
Correct.
But that's not the one he grew up with. Correct. Or no, it is the one he grew up with. No, he grew up with 2.0.
Right.
So why does he know the techie stuff?
Because
he lived
I
and
think,
he could.
Right, and she didn't have to fend for herself and do all the stuff that 1.0 did, so she never became the techie.
Yeah.
So he kind of took over that role. So
yeah, metas were never hunted and persecuted, and even though he's not technically a meta, he was still treated as one because of the wind totem.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of weird though, because these two, Zari 1.0 and Behrad, don't actually have a relationship with each other. Her Behrad is dead.
Yes.
His sister is 2.0, so the two of them together don't have that brother-sister bond of growing up together. They're essentially getting to know each other through this every time that she's here.
Yeah, as adults, yeah, because I think there's some shared history, maybe from when they were pre-dragon, because Zari doesn't become famous until she becomes the dragon girl. Yeah. And that was what happened back in season 4. I think she was 12 or something. Yeah. And so after that, that's when her life completely changes because she gets famous. And so that's when she she changes history so that Meta's never persecuted. And then her life takes a completely different turn. So she never, has to fend for herself. She never has to learn how to be a hacker and all of that stuff. But it looks like Behrad is just technically inclined. Maybe he was an engineer. I don't really know. But so now it's a little bit more believable that he would have been Zari 1.0 in seasons past. Because that's what we're supposed to rewrite our brains to remember, which hasn't happened well. And the fact that Zari 1 is still here, it's not allowing it to ever happen anyway, because we still have Zari 1.0. But they're at least showcasing it because they did make a point of saying, hey, you've got 2 techies, and they showed them both doing equally technical stuff. So they're at least finally showing us, which is what we've been asking for since they introduced him 2 seasons ago.
Yeah. It's better than drugged out, smoking up pro.
Yeah, I did not care for him last season, but in season 5 he wasn't so bad. It just was kind of hard to... He just didn't do as much, I feel like. I don't know.
And if you notice, they're not really giving him a lot. He's always been kind of in the background of every episode this season so far. He's not really at the forefront of anything, so... Which is fine. Just keep him there.
Yeah. Yep. Well, they end up fixing the time machine, but it looks like they're going to take Bishop with them because he's like right on top of them when they transport. So I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh crap, indeed. That made me laugh.
And that whole scene was it was pushing the boundary for me of being a little bit too silly, the whole toilet and parachute and the fact that he's flying down. He's going to land right on top of us. Oh no! It was a little bit much, and he just happens to parachute right on top of them as they time travel out. So that whole scene was just a little bit much for me. But the fact that he is now stuck with them, and wherever they land, he's suddenly going to be there. It'll be interesting to see how they react to it and what his speech is going to be to them. To get them to believe that he's the right bishop. He's the good bishop, and he understands they're the good guys. Like, I wonder how all that's going to play out.
I can't wait to hear this explanation. It's going to be great.
Me too. It's not my fault. It was Gideon.
Yeah. Because they don't know there's an evil Gideon. They have no idea, do they?
Right.
No.
They
Yeah.
don't.
No, they don't. That's why it was Gideon all along. I keep going back to it. I love that, Todd. Thank you so much for saying that. So true.
No, it's gonna be fun. And now we have our bad guy for the season is Evil Gideon, because she's gotten rid of, or this bishop is gone. Gideon's on her own now.
Yes. Which one of you predicted that? One of you did.
That was mine, I think, wasn't it?
Was it yours?
I said Evil.
I think it's.
Yeah, I said Evil Gideon.
Yeah, see? There you go.
Cha-ching! It played out. What do you know?
It did.
Yep. Gideon Howe Waverider. That's what it is.
Oh, man.
All right, well, that brings us to favorite scenes for this week.
Holy Twin Powers, activate!
Whoops. That's not the right clip. We haven't heard that one in forever. How about this one?
Shape out an eagle!
Wow, when was the last time we heard Wonder Twins powers? That was crazy.
From some time before Dan started recording all of our feedback jingles.
That is right. Long time ago. So, what's the order here? I think mine is actually first.
I think yours
and then your
is
guys'
too.
are back to back.
Ours are back to back. Mine is first, and it rolls into Jeff's, literally.
Okay, so we're going to start with mine, and I called this one Davies Gives Up, and it's just, it's Matt Ryan's performance. It's just one of his scenes when he's breaking down and doesn't believe there's anywhere for him to go. He was meant to die, and Zari and Bayrod are trying to help him out. It's just, I just picked one of these because I think Matt is just playing this so well. It just gives me a lot of... I'm really, what's the word? I'm not proud of him. I'm just impressed. I'm really impressed with how he switched. Because as Constantine, he was hit and miss with his performances. I didn't think of him as that great of an actor. I was like, Constantine's easy to play. A smoking drunk idiot who has too much confidence in himself. But now he's made a big switch, and I'm loving it. And now it shows me that this guy can act. So here's one of those clips.
Why don't we put our shoes back on, and we can help you find magnetite or whatever mineral it is you need to get your invention back up and running.
To fix the machine, we need to fix the compass, and in order to do that, we need magnetic material which conducts electricity, and now I doubt that you would even know what to look for. And either way, it's not about fixing the machine or not fixing the machine, you see, because no matter what I do, I'm always meant to fail. You see, my machine, it was meant to explode.
Yeah, but it didn't explode. We're alive and we're here.
Yes, we're here! We're here in the middle of nowhere! My divine mission derailed once again. There is no fighting God's will, my boy. Being here is proof of that.
Yeah, I just think it's really, really good character change for him.
Oh, yeah. I think he's doing a great job with it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm with you. Great performances.
Yeah.
I had a lot of favorite scenes. It was a slow episode, but it was all well acted and entertaining. So
It was. So you're up next then, I guess, right?
it was. And like I said, I had a hard time choosing. I liked a lot about this episode. But I ended up on Ava murdering some trees because that was one of the most fantastic rants I've ever heard.
Here it is.
And this damn IOU list just keeps getting longer and longer. We're never going to be able to fix it at this point. I'm so sick and tired of being sidetracked, you know? And if I ever see another one of those Hoover bots, I swear I'm just gonna...
That was a phenomenal scream. Trust me, I know. I've caused a lot of them.
Well, you know what? I think I really needed that.
And we really needed some firewood.
Ava's great.
It was fun. I wanted to hear it again.
Alright, and next up is me, and we've talked about it a little bit, but I called this clip Learning to Be Human, so let's take a listen.
Your knowledge of the universe is so useful, especially in the wilderness. I'm so glad you're here, Gideon.
Well, I'm glad I'm here too, Gary.
I hadn't pulled that nightshade out of your mouth, you'd be dead, and your lifeless body would be too heavy for me to carry. Try these gooseberries. They're sweet and high in antioxidants. You're eating? Favorite thing about being human.
Yeah? I don't think I could choose my favorite thing. You could see why I became so obsessed. They have so many fun quirks. Eyebrows, belly buttons, nipples.
You have nipples too?
Little secret?
Huh?
I have 3.
And when you put your glasses on, your entire body turns human.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Head to toe.
You've been living as a human for quite a while now, so you must have so many wonderful experiences.
Yeah. But there's so many more things I'd do if we weren't so busy saving the world.
Like what else? Would you swim in the ocean?
Oh, as soon as I get the chance.
Would you skydive?
No.
Oh.
I'm afraid of heights.
Would you like to have sexual intercourse with me?
Hey, that human experience we had, that was fun, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. It was great fun.
You know what I just realized? My favorite thing about being human is being with other humans.
Me too.
Yeah, I mean, I just love them talking about what it's like to be a human, and we've been getting to see things through Gideon's eyes all season, and now we can kind of go back and think about what we've seen of Gary in a whole new light because of what we know of him being an alien, and it's just cute. I liked it a lot. So
I did too.
In some kind of weird roundabout way, it saves Gary too, because there was if I have to admit, there was just a little small part of me that didn't like that they made him an alien. I liked Gary for just being Gary, just a goofball agent that was too nerdy for anybody to really like that much. And then when they made him an alien, I was a little bit, I don't know. There's a part of it that I didn't like, and then the fact that they wrote this part of a story with Gideon suddenly gets rid of that feeling for me that I originally had, and it's cool. I mean, I love Gary, but this just made him even better.
Yeah, I agree. I think this scene helped a lot, or the relationship.
Yeah.
If you'd like to support our podcast, you can do so at our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/tomorrowslegends.
All right, let's get into some feedback.
Don't keep it to yourself now. Come on, baby, talk to us. It's feedback, yeah.
First up is an email from Ricky. Ricky sounds like a new feedbacker.
Yes, Ricky is a new feedbacker. So let's hear the email. Hello, legends. This is insert cool hero name. Or Ricky. I've been listening to your podcast for the past few months, following your entire season 7 coverage so far, and even listening to older episodes to follow along with my rewatches. I finally wanted to write in for the first time, so I'll put my thoughts into bullet points.
Well, awesome. Thank you for that, and welcome to the Waverider.
Yes.
Do you need help coming up with a superhero name? Because, we can help you with that. We've done that before.
That's true.
Yep.
We have. Yeah, if you want us to help, others in the community besides myself tend to be better at it, but we will certainly help. But yeah, and I believe he's also following us on Twitter, so I interacted with him there before.
Way to go. Well, just glad that you're out there and you found us and you're catching up. It's great to have you here.
I guess with them. Anyways, I'm bad at pronouns. Sorry. This was an amazing OG Zari episode. Pairing her with Gwen was brilliant, and it gave her a plot that finally wasn't about Nate.
Yes.
I love them, but her becoming just a love interest made me sad. Yes. Yeah. We all called it Gwen Loved a Man. It's nice to see Matt play another queer character, but with a huge glaring difference this time. While John was openly ready to do anything with anyone, Gwen comes from a time where he couldn't be himself and be open, and I'm so interested to see how Gwen continues down the line now that he came out to Zari.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point.
Gary and Gideon was something I was guessing that was going to happen, and honestly, I sort of like it. It's cute, and their shared bond over just becoming humans more recently is very nice. I will say, however, I don't necessarily love the typical legend trope of having two legends speak to each other once and then immediately shag, and thus sparks fly. Yeah. I loved watching Astra empower Ava in this episode and give her an axe to just stand around as Ava let her anger out. Astra has grown so much.
She has.
Yes, I know.
Suddenly.
I know. That's why I love that scene, so that's why we get to listen to it again. Yeah. I seriously love Nate and Zari together now and love that each had their own plots this episode, but still came together in the end. I really don't want to lose Nick Zano, though. I know I don't either. Behrad has been off drugs nearly this entire season so far, like Cheyenne said he would be, and this episode proved that he could be more useful than just the stoner who is essentially useless. Right.
The writers must have gotten feedback. They must have heard how I would say 90% of fans hated him, drug stoner Behrad. So
yeah, I didn't care for him last season at all.
Yeah.
I'm curious if this means the bishop we first saw in season 6 was a robot, or is Evil Gideon placing a new bishop in the spot for the bishop we saw last season?
Yes, we tried to figure that out.
Refer back to our previous debate.
Yeah.
Overall,
no answers.
Right? Yeah, we just went in circles as usual. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode. It was the most down-to-earth of the season so far, but focused on building Gwyn's backstory and filling in the Bishop and Evil Gideon gaps, which was much needed. Another solid Season 7 outing in a row as I continue to love this season. I can't wait for the mid-season finale next week, and hope you legends enjoy it. And that was from me.
Yeah. Well, again, Ricky, it's great to have you on board. The one thing I'm curious about is Season 7, you found us, so I want to know how you found us. How did you get to us after 7 seasons, or are you new to Legends as well, and you're just kind of catching up on the show, and we're the first podcast you came across? So yeah, let us know a bit of that background. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, and if you give us some of your likes and interests, that'll help everybody in the community come up with your superhero name.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure you're on Twitter, but if you're into Facebook, you can join our Facebook group too.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on there. A lot of people sharing pictures and news and all kinds of articles and stuff coming out for the show. It's fun. It's a good community that's built up in there.
Yeah.
All right, next up is an email from Tails. I have not gotten to read a Tails email yet, so I'm taking this one. Good episode overall. We finally got OG Zari back, even if this is the last we see of her. While I enjoyed the pair-ups this episode, I hope they don't continue with this format for too long, as the number of different storylines they had to cover meant that most of the groups got bugger all screen time. I think separating everyone into 2 to 3 groups is the sweet spot. Astra and Spooner working with Ava and Sarah, it was fun to see their interactions, as there haven't been any since the start of the season. Oh, yeah. They finally separated Zari from Nate this episode, and it helped me remember why I loved Zari 1 so much. Seeing her getting Gwyn to open up reminded me of how good she was with other characters, and admittedly means I'm going to miss her more when they wrap up her storyline. I don't think we'll see her again once the storyline with Nate is finished.
Sad.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, because if you remember, we loved when Zari became buddies with Mick. She was able to talk to him and get him to open up to her. She's done that with every character, and what's been missing. So yeah, good point there. I love that they turned Evil Gideon into Hal, complete with dialogue and imagery. See? Also, kudos to the writers for playing the long game with the joke about the red button in the bathroom from season 4.
Yeah, see? Came back.
Yeah, and I totally forgot about it. I give this episode 7.5 Avas with an axe out of 10.
Yeah, you should
Next up is Daryl.
Bishop is so lame.
He just won't give in to him, eh?
Yeah. Thank God, and Ava was sharing the scene with him. Astra's anger at Gary regarding dinosaurs was so cute.
Very funny.
If and when I do a rewatch, I'm skipping the Nate and Zari scenes. Oh man. Oh gosh. Gideon is newly human, so how dare Nate call her a ding-dong?
True.
Gideon went full HAL 9000.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Short and sweet, just like you said.
Yep.
All right, next up is Perry White.
Hey, Flash, Harley, and X-Force 11. It's Perry White here with feedback for Legends of Tomorrow's episode, Deus Ex Latrina. It's about 6:35 on Friday. I just finished watching the episode. Didn't have time to take a whole lot of notes, but boy, did I love this episode. I'm going to give it 9.69 rose in the gooseberry bush out of 10. So yeah, I gave it a 69 in there somehow. I just loved how this episode flowed from scene to scene. I thought it was really great how Nate obviously took charge of the mission when Sarah and Ava seemed like they were obviously having a meltdown. And I think it was appropriate for his character to do so. We said it for some time. He's the next OG in line, and it was appropriate that he took those leadership steps. And it was just really nice to see everybody step up, fill a role, and get this mission rolling. The way the camera work was done, the way the scenes flowed, the way they were edited, I just thought that was masterful. And speaking of going from scene to scene, what I really liked about this episode more than anything else was the pairing of characters that they did or used in this episode and the reasons why. Obviously, the most fun pairing of characters to me had to be obviously Gideon and Gary. Both of them sort of exploring humanity in new and fun ways. And good Lord, when Gideon said, "Do you want to have sexual intercourse with me?" In fact, I'm still laughing about it now, and it was probably 30 minutes ago that I watched the episode. The other pairing that I loved a whole lot also was the pairing of Zari 1.0 and Gwen Davis. Both of them have apparently a lot of history, or a lot of experience, I guess I should say, with sort of trying to process pain and loss. And it felt very organic to have those two characters paired together and to have the intimate conversation that Dr. Davis was able to have with Zari, and for Zari to be able to process it in such a way. Sure, there are other characters on the show who have dealt with some significant loss, but I think it's important to remember and realize the losses that Zari has experienced and how she's able to use that to help Dr. Davis deal with the losses and the pain and the anguish that he's dealing with, and I really love their pairing. The other pairing that I liked, believe it or not, was the pairing of Bishop to the AI Gideon. Obviously, when we first see those two together, we think that they're going to be a team of folks going through the timeline, taking opportunities to take out our legends. And I just really loved how the writing and the directing and how this episode sort of just teased out the fact that little by little, Bishop was getting in over his head in terms of dealing with Gideon. And ultimately, she got to a point where she was essentially taken over. And it just sort of brings home just how devastating Gideon could be in her AI form, also equipped with a Waverider, if she had, or if the program had, essentially nefarious purposes. And to think about the fact the matter is, the only reason that we don't have that with the Gideon and the Waverider we know is, first of all, because of Rip, and then more importantly because of the programming that he gave this particular Gideon and the influence of the legends. And we saw immediately from the influence that AI Gideon was getting from Bishop and Time Mistress Ava, which is a fantastic nickname in my book. But you could see how the wheels were beginning to turn in the AI Gideon of how she was to interpret what it is that they were trying to accomplish, and essentially took that and ran with it. And it was really scary, and it was really ominous, and I think it was really well done. Having that character, having that as quote unquote, the antagonist of what we're going to be up against for the rest of the season is actually pretty interesting and pretty scary at the same time. It also has me wondering, and I know we sort of go down this rabbit hole when you think about an AI that has this mission that sort of becomes incredibly autonomous, and you just wonder, when will this AI Gideon get to the point and realize that essentially the only and best way to preserve the timeline is to not only eliminate the legends, but essentially sort of eliminate free will, because she notably said that humans are fallible, and I just have to assume and imagine it's only a matter of time before this AI version of Gideon decides that she needs to start replacing many, many more humans with these clone robot abominations, I guess is what I would like to call them. And so I really am interested in seeing where the rest of the storyline goes and seeing if that is something that they explore on this show. I think that's pretty much going to be it for me today. I am incredibly looking forward to what other folks have to say. This is Perry White making this deadline. I know I'm pushing it, but I think I got it in. Anyway, I'm out.
You did.
Yeah, got it in. Don't worry about it.
Did I bring up the same AI points that he brought up, that the only way... I think we brought that up at one point in one of our podcasts, the Thanos dilemma, and smart AIs, the first thing they do is eliminate humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last week, actually.
Right there,
yeah.
Right there with you, Carrie.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting idea. Like, she's going to want to just start replacing all humans with, robotic versions, because the robot can live forever anyway. You don't have to worry about them. You don't have to feed them. You don't have to do anything. So it's the whole...
They're programmable.
Yeah. It's the whole Matrix idea as well. I mean, that's why the Matrix computer takes over. So, yeah. No, it's crazy. This is our Legends version of it. So how are we going to stop Evil Gideon now? Yeah, I don't know.
Good question.
It's a cool twist. It's a good villain. It's a really good idea. If this is possibly our last season, it's a good way to ride it out with. So
true.
Maybe maybe in the end, they get rid of time travel altogether. They somehow put a stop to it so no one can time travel and nobody can mess things up.
Except Barry when he decides he wants to.
Yeah. Technology-wise, but there'll be no time masters. No one will be the master of history and time. So, yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
We will see.
What they do.
Yeah. Next up is Dreamweaver.
Hello, Legendaires. Dreamweaver here with my feedback for Legends of Tomorrow, Season 7, Episode 6. And just to start off, I didn't get a chance to send in feedback for last week's episode, but wanted to say that it was another really solid episode. One with some cool steampunk tech vibes, almost Twilight Zone mixed with Lost kind of feels, and lots of head-hurting if you think about it too hard, timey-wimey stuff, because so many implications and things to think about there. But on to this one. I'm going to give this episode 8, so that's what the red button does, out of 10. It gave us a surprisingly comprehensive look at Bishop's side of things and how we got to this point, and I didn't hate Bishop, except maybe in the beginning, seeing as his actions directly caused a sequence of big ripples that have been happening, instead of just letting the Legends leave 1925. But his side of the story, especially with Evil Gideon, was really interesting. And also, Bishop says that his blueprints were still futuristic to his time period. So who knows when the Waverider model of time machines was designed and built by the Time Masters.
Yeah.
The vanishing point is outside of time, so could literally be put into the actual timeline at any point. We don't know. This Evil Gideon is a white version, with her only directive being to protect the integrity of the timeline. Her only purpose is what is causing her to be evil, it seems. No humanity to show her the way. But we know that even prior to the Legends being recruited and her directive being changed, Gideon wasn't like this with the Writ. So maybe the Maker rubs off on its creation. I'll just lump all the Waverider, Gideon, Bishop stuff here. So it was interesting that Gideon suggested to make Hoover a robot instead of a clone, because in her words, clones are still human and still fallible. I think we're seeing what could be a master plan for Gideon here. In seeing, from what I can tell, this Gideon is what faced our Gideon in the 100th episode, and she saw how weak, in her opinion, our Gideon became because of learning humanity and how much the timeline was changed since going away from the Time Master's original directive. So in seeing that, she may want to wipe out all of humanity anyway to save the timeline. I feel like she might come to the fact that that's the only way. If you've watched Marvel's What If series, Gideon may be becoming our Ultron. She even killed Ava out of her getting in the way of Bishop's feeling, and thus causing more damage to the timeline. And then we find out that Gideon created a Bishop robot to replace him to go about his life so he can stay and be a Time Master forever, with no other distractions. And she programmed that robot, and then thus subsequent clones of Bishop to follow out what he already did in the timeline, at least what already happened on our end last season, but not on his. Gideon is making sure his history stays on track so she can be born, essentially. I mean, Bishop goes through an entire arc in Crisis in this episode, realizing that he does, in fact, become a villain, and wants to change that, knowing the legends are good now. So I guess what he said last season before being mind-wiped really did happen. And he pushed the red button. We finally saw what the red button does. Yes, it was cheesy and silly, but I'll take it. I'm fine. Also, the fact that Sarah saw that and knows he pushed the red button, does that mean that she's pushed the red button? Anyway... No, wait, one more thing. Gideon mentions that there wouldn't be the danger of ripples if Bishop blows up the legends here in Chernobyl because of how close they are to a catastrophic event. We've never heard that as a rule before on Legends. Did the writers watch Loki? The legends have definitely made ripples around other catastrophic events before. Or maybe they haven't. The Battle of the Somme seemed unchanged, despite a truce that never happening, and all kinds of superpowers on display there. Yeah, they broke time, but that was because they interacted with themselves. But World War I's and subsequent history after that didn't seem to change. They couldn't change anything in the future with Rip's family during Vandal Savage's reign either, just to name a few examples. Yeah, the Oculus was in play there, but the fact that the Time Master still needed to safeguard the timeline meant that things could be changed at least. So maybe them stopping a bunch of people from dying in Chernobyl won't cause as huge a ripple as they think. Or I finally get my robot legends to come and clean that up and send everyone who was leaving to die. Still counting on those robot legends. It only seems logical to have them fight against themselves at this point. Now, anyway, Nate did a surprisingly good job at leading the day, with Ava and Sarah being stressed out, even though he said he didn't want to be in charge last season. He gets a lot done when there's a big decision on his mind, apparently. He knew how to coordinate and pair everyone off well to get them to calm down. Astra with Ava to help her get her frustration out in a productive way, in what could have been easily a violent way. And who knew our Ava was Lumberjack Ava? And putting the two people who like to shoot and stab things together. Always love it when Sarah gets stabby. And Spooner fashioning a bow out of the wood. Would have been funny to hear just ever so slightly the Arrow theme playing in the back there. One thing, though, that has me worried is the way they framed this, with Ava saying she wishes she wasn't in charge sometimes, and the two of them seeing that everything was handled fine with them taking the day off, and the way last episode had them talking about having a porch to go home to. Mixed with Nate and Zari's moving into the totem together, that gives me big, this is coming to an end vibes. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping this is just a setup, hopefully, for one last mission, one last season after this, and not this season being the end. Because if we end up finding out that this is the last season while we are midway through and not beforehand, I will be sad and caught off guard. On to Zari, Beirut, and Gwyn, who surprisingly were a really good combo. Zari is a good person to open up to, and seeing that Gwyn wanted to save everyone at Chernobyl, and feeling it's his purpose, he's actually a lot like Zari 1.0 when she first joined the team, wanting to save people in history that weren't supposed to be saved. And we got more on Gwyn, him losing his whole unit in World War I in 1916 in the Mehmet's Woods. I did a little research on this because I was curious where that fell in regards to the legends being at the Battle of Somme in the same year. And turns out the history Davies gives has factual truth. There was a massacre of a Welsh unit at Mehmet's Woods as part of the Battle of the Somme. It's in the same area. So they would have been nearby when the legends were there. And he lost his best friend and someone he was in love with. I felt that was the route they were going with the dog tags and Sarah's talk with him last episode. And no wonder he quotes poetry to stay calm when Alan wrote him poetry. And I'm glad that Zari got more to do this episode outside of just being in a relationship with Nate. Her technical skills and people skills came handy this episode, and also look at how much Beirut knows and can do when he's not high. I'm very impressed he knew the exact date of the Chernobyl meltdown, because I sure don't, and how mechanical he actually is. Well, I think that's all my thoughts for now. I don't have much to say towards the Gideon Gary thing. I'm just going to let that one ride out, just like they did. Okay. Looking forward to next week. Until then, your friend Dreamweaver.
Good breakdown. I think sometimes she explains things better than we can.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Good feedback as always from our Legendaires. If you guys want to become part of the show, we're just past halfway, I guess, close to halfway of the season, pretty much, right?
Yeah, just about. I think there's 13, so...
It's 13 episodes, so there you go. Yeah, I mean, halfway through next episode, we'll be officially halfway through the season. So there you go. Getting some feedback we'd love to hear from continued more listeners like Ricky tonight. It was awesome to have them join us as well. So keep it up, guys. This is what you got to do.
If you would like to be a part of the show, you can send in your feedback to Tomorrow's Legends Podcast at gmail.com. You can also reach us on Twitter at Tomorrow's Legends. We'd love you to join our Facebook page at facebook.com/groups/Tomorrow's Legends and become part of the community.
And I bet you were waiting to hear our Legends outro music begin right there.
Even I was. It started playing in my head.
We have got a new tiny section that we are adding to the show because The Flash has begun. And you know what? In our little realm of podcasts, there really isn't anyone covering Flash right now. There is a lot of Flash podcasts out there. We've recommended a few to you, like Flash TV Talk or The Scarlet Speedster. Those are good ones. But we wanted to give our thoughts on Flash going forward because this could potentially be its last season as well, and they're starting off big by having this big 5-episode kind of a crossover event, a bunch of characters coming to visit the show. So we thought from this point forward we are just going to give you an overall rating and quick review of each Flash episode as part of our Legends coverage. So we're going to kick it off with X-Force and Harley. I have not yet gotten to watch it because I've got some surprising news. You guys are going to have to tune into The Mandalore to listen, but I've been away this week on set of an HBO TV series with Pedro Pascal filming his new TV show, The Last of Us. I got in a scene with him, and I'll tell you all about it on The Mandalore, so you're going to have to check that out. But for now, here's what X-Force and Harley thought of the Flash premiere episode of Season 8.
So I liked it. I thought it was a good start. I gave it 8. Finally, Flash is up and running. I like the writing. I love Tony Curran. He's a great actor. I loved him, his villainy on the show Defiance, and then he had a real poignant role on Doctor Who playing Vincent Van Gogh, and so I just really, he's got a good range to him. And I'm excited to see what he does here. And it just seems like each week we're going to get a different guest star to cross over to kind of help Barry. And I'm glad they started with Ray because it's nice to know that he and Nora are doing well and he's getting back to do what he loves. And it just really gave me hope for the Legends when they do decide to step off the Waverider. And, all in all, I thought it was a good start to the season and an interesting villain and some twists and turns there. So I thought it was a good start.
Yeah. I'm going to go with you there. I rated it just a tad lower. I gave this one 7.5 ways to make the citizen relevant. So what I really appreciated about this episode is they actually seem to address a whole lot of issues people have been pointing out for the last 2 or 3 seasons. And it's actually super fresh in my mind because I just listened to a podcast called The 42 Cast. I've been a frequent guest over there, and Cammie was a guest on their Flash podcast. And so I just listened to it, and then I watched this episode. And so a lot of the stuff that they talked about, they actually completely addressed in the episode, and I thought that was really fascinating. I mean, they turned Iris's blog into a real media company, again, making it relevant. Sorry, Flash, this is a lot of spoilers. They had Barry do his actual job. And he even had scenes with Caitlin. That was a big gripe that Cammie had brought up. She says that they don't have scenes together because they actually have chemistry together. And that their relationship as friends overshadows the relationship with Iris as his wife. And, she's not wrong. But they also even kind of sort of alluded to the fact that Barry might be a villain, which also I'm sure made Cammie super happy because she's always saying Barry's really a villain anyway. So... But other than all of that, I really loved Ray's role since, I want to bring it back to some Legends. And I'm glad he was actually part of the episode plot and not like an afterthought in just a few scenes so they can call it a crossover event. So it's Flash, you'll be happy when you watch it. He's very integrated into the show and it actually makes sense. So
cool. Well, I give it an 8. I'm looking forward to it. Because I've only heard good things about it. Everybody, whether it's on the different Facebook pages or people talking about it, everyone said it was good. It's exciting and that this was a fun episode, so I'm looking forward to it. I will actually get to it tonight because now I'm actually home and got home in time to be able to record with you guys, but I'll catch up on some TV. Yeah, barely. I mean, this if you guys could tell, this was all by the seat of my pants. I did not have a single note written tonight, so but yeah.
Well, I thought it went well.
There we go. So, I'll catch up on that and catch up on everything else, too. And like I said, head over to The Mandalore if you want to hear my story of what it's like to be on an HBO set with Pedro Pascal, because pretty darn cool stories I got to tell. That is all we got for you tonight. So this is what you were expecting before. And I guess I could have saved my news for this section because usually I like to have something to talk about at the end of the show. So there you go.
You could always play the music over what you said.
I could.
In editing.
Editing is magic. I could take it all out. I am going to tweak that section. We'll get some sound effects in there. We'll make it all sound great for you guys so it's entertaining. But if you guys have any thoughts you want to add to the show, if you guys want to add that to your feedback, don't make it super long, but if you want to just add in your quick rating and review of Flash, we can add that in as well. And we can just kind of make Flash a bit of part of the show because it's kind of funny. I mean, I go by the name of Flash, and we don't ever talk about the Flash TV show because there always was a podcast for it. So
but we do all watch it.
Yeah, we all watch it, and we all care about some of the characters and what's going on there. And sometimes we knock it for what it does, but whatever. It's just still. The CW likes to think Flash is the torchbearer after Arrow went down, but I don't know. That's up for debate too. I'd love to hear what everyone thinks of that. Which show do they think is leading the Arrowverse right now? That would be cool. Superman Lois. That's what we think. So there you go. Anyway, just a wee bit. Well, that's all we got for you guys tonight, guys. Everyone have a good weekend. This is The Flash signing off.
And this is Harley Quinn. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm out.
This is X-Force 11, so say we all.
Tomorrow's Legends is not affiliated with CBS, Warner Brothers, or the CW. We're a fan-made podcast for entertainment purposes only and are part of the Cybercast Network.